Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to another episode of Wild and Live. I hope everybody's doing well. How you guys doing? It's what is this? Week 4 of isolation. We're getting there. We're getting there slowly, people. Together, in it together, right? I hope you guys are doing well, and thanks for joining this series, this conversation. Today we've got a really cool guest coming up for you. For those of you that are new to the channel, what is this all about? Well, Wild and Live is all about sharing some of the coolest stories, animal stories around the world, and we're doing that by enlisting the help of some really fantastic conservationists and people that work with animals. On our last episode, we were meant to have Charlie Young. We did get a live session going, but unfortunately, we didn't. The sound was playing a bit of an issue, so we're going to do that interview with Charlie again later on this evening at 6 p.m. We're going to do it pre-recorded, and then we're going to post it tomorrow morning. So have no fear, you're going to have that session with Charlie very shortly. But today we've got a great guest with us. We've got someone who is so the way I know about this guy is that he is a big cat conservationist. However, on his recent travels, on his recent adventures, he's been working with bears. So, Giles Clarke, are you wild and live? Are you with us? I can hear you. Let's have a look. Let's make sure that we've got everything going on. Giles, are you there?
Yeah, I am.
Hey, we've got sound in there. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to double check that this is actually working, because last time all the sound was coming through correctly and nobody was hearing it at home. So I'm going to actually check on my phone right now, make sure that we are live, because this would literally wind me up. How are you doing, Giles?
Yeah, I'm very well, and you?
Yeah, not too bad. We're
Really?
going to be talking about your adventures to Southeast Asia. I think we're live, so let's start by double checking. Hey, Matteo! Oh, awesome. Matteo says it's working, so we can hear everybody, which is fantastic.
Someone's got us.
Yeah, I know. Let's get into it, because, like I said, you before we get on to the bears that you're working with, you had this a couple of kind of outlandish shows to do with big cats in houses. Can you touch on that very briefly?
Oh, so yeah, where to begin? I suppose, in a nutshell, when people ask, what do I do, or what's my career, or I have historically been a zookeeper. I've been a zookeeper like all zookeepers are usually very passionate, but I've been a zookeeper that's had a passion for not only the animals that I look after and are in my care, but in equal measure, I'm passionate about trying to make a real contribution to helping save them in the wild. Because ultimately, that's the only justification I can have. For the last 25 years, I've now worked in zoos and wildlife parks and various sanctuaries. But I couldn't put my head on the pillow at night and soundly, live with myself if I was looking after them in captivity, but not doing everything we could to save them in the wild.
And that's where your experience with working with tigers and big cats came about. You worked at the Big Cat Sanctuary in Kent, I believe. But let's go back to those programs. I think it was called Big Cats About the House and Tigers About the House. Yeah. What were those shows about for anybody that hasn't seen them?
So ultimately, in a nutshell, those shows followed me when I was on my journey at respective zoos, at Australia Zoo for Tigers About the House, and then the Big Cat Sanctuary here in England in Kent for Big Cats About the House. And they followed me as I ham-reared various cats for various reasons, and followed those cubs' journey for the first 6 or 12 months of their life. But we utilise that as a platform to tell the bigger story, if you like, about conservation of tigers in the wild, or conservation of jaguars and other cats, and the challenges and faces that they've faced. So that's it really in a nutshell. It sort of was a day in the life of following me, but I felt that it was there. We utilised that to tell a much bigger message. So whilst the cubs were incredibly captivating and the audience fell in love with them as individuals.
I can imagine.
They were actually ambassadors for their wild counterparts and helping us not only tell the story of conservation, but also, raise awareness and generate support.
So, this is the third series of About the House. This one, in this series, you're doing exactly the same thing. You're trying to raise awareness about the plight of sun bears and moon bears. Where did you go? You were working with these two species. They are absolutely enchanting. What's the difference between a sun bear and a moon bear?
Oh man, okay, so I feel like there's so many questions there in one. Like, I should also put it. I never feel that I can justifiably call myself an expert in anything. But historically, I've worked with more big cats than any other family or type or species of animal. So bears was a completely new experience for myself, and I ended up going along that path because I was given such an incredible opportunity where I could take 12 months out almost of my life last year, where I could go and help a very good friend that runs an organisation called Free the Bears, and they're setting up a new sanctuary in Laos. So they've operated a bear sanctuary in Laos for many years, but it's full. There is literally no more room at the inn, so to speak. So they've had to expand and build a new sanctuary. And initially that was just going to be for bears, but it's pushed out and gone beyond that. It's now for a whole multitude of other species and rescued wildlife just beyond bears. But going back to your question, what's the difference between a moon bear and a sun bear? Well, if they both have very similar markings, and that's where people tend to start to get a little bit confused, if you like.
Right. Yeah.
They've got this crest on their chests, and hence the name sun and moon bears. But beyond that, they're actually completely, distinctly different from each other. So sun bears are the smallest species of bear. And are quite short, very stocky, have very short, silky, almost looking fur. They've got little ears. Moon bears, on the other hand, or otherwise known as the Asiatic black bear, almost look very, very similar to sort of a North American black bear. So they're much bigger. They've got shaggy fur. They've got big ears. They would be the sort of what you would quintessentially almost distinguish immediately as being a bear. Whereas a sun bear, I having the privilege, as I said last year, to be around one particular individual, she was such a character in personality, but also, just looking at her for the first few months, as I was getting used to her as much as she was getting used to me. She's sort of this weird combination of half-looking Rottweiler type, short, piglet. Like they're quite unusual looking, and.
So let me get this straight. So you're saying that sun bears look like a cross between a bear, a Rottweiler, and a piglet. I like that. I'm not going to let you continue anymore. That's Giles Clarke's description of a sun bear. They are really enchanting animals. I had a chance to work with them a couple of years ago. One of the things that I was very surprised about, or I found quite interesting, is the fact that they live in these really dense forests, these rainforests, and they're really good at climbing trees, and they eat such a wide variety of different fruits. Can you tell us how their diet impacts their intelligence?
Oh, okay. Well, they eat such a wide variety of foods. So it's not just fruits. They eat. Some bears are thought to eat small mammals and lizards. They definitely, if they get the opportunity, they come across birds' nests, for example. They eat eggs. Some bears are sort of have this reputation as being the typical honey bear, and that's their most favourite food. And if we ever needed to encourage the bears at the sanctuary to do anything, if we waved a pot of honey around, usually they would.
That was a golden
Yeah,
ticket.
that's exactly. They'd roll over and cooperate. So they love honey, but they also eat lots of things like invertebrates, so termites and ants. And because there's such a vast variety within their diet, that presents lots and lots of different challenges in being able to obtain that food. So out of the hundreds of different types of food that they eat, each one presents a different complex problem in being able to get that. And so therefore, that translates into having these, sort of really complex brains, because they have to problem solve the entire time when it comes to catching or not catching, I should say, but obtaining their food. So, I've got.
So, sorry, go ahead, Giles.
I was going to say, I've got some lots of zookeeper friends, and some of those have worked with bears in a zoo and captive setting, and I almost think quite rightly, some of them have said they probably think that the bears that they look after and they work with are some of the most intelligent animals that you can have. So they're really complex, they're really smart.
So it makes sense that if you have this, incredibly diverse rainforest that you live in, and you've got different plants and different trees fruiting at different times, like you said, trying to find termites or scavenge for other small prey items, whether it's lizards or whatever that might be, that they have to have this complex brain to be able to have this mind map of. And not just a 3D mind map, almost a 4D mind map, because they're having to map out their environment in a 3D perspective, but also think about the time as well.
Exactly. There's different seasons for different fruits, etc. So it's such a complex, diverse, system. And like we said, and the fact that the habitats and the range that they live in. But when it comes to food, it's not just how intelligent they are. It's the role that they then play within the ecosystem, because not only as so many animals are, they're important seed dispersers. They eat fruits in one area, and then obviously digest them, and the seeds go through their system, and then they poo those seeds out 5-6 kilometers away in a different area. But they're also ecosystem engineers. They have the most amazingly sharp claws, which they use not only to pull into termite nests on the ground, but they will also find rotten, hollow parts of a log that they start to explore for grubs. And that way in which they interact with the environment then creates habitats and homes for other animals. So in a tree, what might start as a little hole and they explore it and make it bigger is then the perfect nesting spot for a species of bird, etc. So they play such a vital role. And if you think in some of the countries now that you find both the species of bear that we're talking about, they are one of the largest carnivores, so to speak, in that order left in the habitat, because the tigers are gone, so the big cats are gone, and those bears play not only such an important role in the ecosystem, but also they're so charismatic. From a conservation perspective, they're now the flagships.
They do have so much character and so bubbly. Definitely, the cubs are. You just see that kind of playful nature, playful and boisterous. I wonder. Here's a question for you, Giles: do sun bears hibernate like polar bears do,
No.
or like grizzly bears?
No. So both the species of bear are not strict hibernators. In fact, the sun bear not at all. And the moon bear you can find across such a vast range that potentially, as it starts to get up, towards the northern parts of its range, in the foothills of the Himalayas, they might go into not a strict hibernation, but they will definitely slow down in the much colder months.
Okay, so they don't hibernate necessarily in the same way as polar bears do, or grizzly bears. Do you think I'm trying to figure out what were the challenges you found? Actually, before we go into that, I want to know more about the sunbed. We've actually got 5 minutes to go. Let's have a look to see if we've got any questions. That's what I should do. This is a good question. So, Mateo Jackson asks, what kind of qualifications do you need to get a job like yours? 30 seconds to answer that question.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. So when I started, it was a long, long time ago now. But if you're still at school and, you want to get a job in conservation, you want to get a job in zoos and looking after animals, then stick to your academic studies. That's really important. But beyond that, the best way to sort of get your foot in the door is to start volunteering. If you can offer your services, get in front of these people in terms of volunteering, then that's the way that I started. When I was a teenager at a zoo in Hertfordshire, still there, called Paradise Wildlife Park. If you can get your foot in the door and volunteer, one opportunity will always hopefully lead on to another.
So volunteering is what the top of your list, of course. If you really want to get into the academic side of things, you'd look into studying biology or zoology, and maybe going on to study conservation.
And some of the world's most renowned conservationists, started off doing their research work on and doing their degrees and their masters and that, studying a particular species or ecosystem or what have you. And then they've gone on to now become, some of the world's most famous conservationists.
Famous conservationists, or some of the world's most famous TV personalities. Maybe that might be yourself. Can you tell us about your experience as we kind of round up in Laos? One startling fact that I found out recently was that that bear bile is being touted as a potential cure for COVID-19, for coronavirus, which sounds ridiculous. Were those one of the issues that you found that you were facing whilst you were out there?
It's absolutely horrendous. So part of our mission at Free the Bears is to actually start closing down some of the bear bile farms that you will find in the region. And this is starting to happen in some areas, both with Free the Bears in Vietnam and other organisations in China. But there is still estimated to be 10,000 bears that you'll have in these horrendous, absolutely barbaric bear bile farms. And you correctly stated that the Chinese Health Commission, I think, has recently suggested that they're exploring whether bear bile could be used as a cure for this COVID-19. Now, as to whether you can't get a cure for a virus, so whether they're utilising it to explore whether it will help with some of the symptoms. But what I would say is that it's ridiculous, and not only are we looking at thousands and thousands of animals suffering in terms of situations like bear bile farms, but it's having such a massive impact on bears being killed and taken out of the wild, whether that's, cubs that watch their mothers be killed and then are taken out to fill the positions within these bear bile farms, or whether they're killed directly for their own gallbladders. There's other alternatives out there, and good traditional Chinese medicine associations around the world have even said that themselves. There are other herbal alternatives that don't have this, horrendous impact on wildlife and on animals.
So you were that was just some of the work that you were doing out there. As we're actually at our 20-minute mark, but I want to ask you 3 more questions.
Really?
Actually, it's one question wrapped with one question wrapped into one. Can you give us because obviously you've had like a fantastic experience with these sun bears and moon bears. You're getting to see the highs and the lows, and it'd be great to finish on some of those highs. What were some of your 3 favorite moments, 3 favorite facts or things you found out or learnt about sun bears and moon bears?
Oh my God, 3 favorite things. I just think, like physically, they are absolutely, both species in their own right, incredibly so well adapted to their environment. Like we did this demonstration with Mary, the sun bear cub that we rescued, where we had a clear plastic tube, and we could put some of her favorite treats in the tube and then watch her in the same way as she would utilize her tongue in a honey nest, a bee's nest for honey, or in a hollow of a log after grubs and insects and what have you. But we could physically see just how extraordinary her tongue was. So that was definitely visually one of the highlights for me. It was absolutely incredible. It was hilarious and fascinating in equal measure. But in terms of beyond that, what was some of the the highlights of the favorite moments? It has to be some of the rescues. We took part in numerous rescues of bears that had originally been born in the wild, had been snatched out of the wild as a tiny cub, and then spent the rest of their entire lives in tiny cages, completely void of any physical or mental stimulation, and had spent years in those cages. And when we went along with the authorities and rescued these bears, once they've finished their period of quarantine, etc., we could release them out into enclosures as natural as possibly we could make them type enclosures that were thousands and thousands of square meters in size, and to watch them take their first swim or climb their first tree or feel grass for the first time or break open a termite mound is absolutely extraordinary, and will always be something that I treasure, that I was able to be a part of that, and to see the fact that for some of them it won't be possible to put them back out into the wild, but at least they're going to have the quality of life that they deserve for the rest of their life.
Sounds like you've been doing some fantastic work out there. When do you think we'll be able to see your show? Sometime, hopefully, in summer?
Yeah, hopefully sometime between now and summer. So BBC Two, and it's going to be called Bears About the House.
Bears About the House, BBC Two, sometime in the summer. We're going to look out for it. Before we do go, Giles, I've got one last question, a short one. How long do bears live for? Do you know how long some bears live for?
Oh my goodness! Right, they will live in captivity into their 20s. So
into their 20s. There we go. We've got 20-year-old bears, probably are much older than some of our viewers are watching right now.
I wish I could.
Older than me. I'm only 18. No, I'm not. No, that's great, Giles. Thanks so much for chatting with us today. I know we've only been able to kind of just delve in slightly, but it'll be great to see your show once it's out. For anybody that wants to find out a bit more, I'm gonna keep an eye on the BBC website and make sure that that there's a link for everybody to follow. But Bears About the House, BBC, in sometime in the summer. Giles, it's been awesome talking to you, and we'll catch up again soon.
Yeah, soon. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Nice one, Giles. Take care.
Take care, man.
Look after yourself. Thanks, Giles. Well, there you go, everybody. That was Giles Clarke. He is a conservationist. He's doing some fabulous work, and I'm really excited to see his project on some bears go out later this summer. That brings us to the end of today's Wild and Live. I don't even know what to call these conversations, live lessons, vlogs, video podcasts, whatever you want to call them. These online lessons and conversations. Later on, so on Friday, we're going to be joined by Yusuf Rafik, aka that zoology guy. Most of you may have seen him on his new show Bugface. It's going to be great. We're going to be talking everything related to inverts and insects, bugs. So prepare yourself. We're actually going to have a special recording later on today at 6 p.m. We're going to be joined by Charlie Young. We're going to see if we can record that session that we weren't able to do earlier this week. So lots more coming up. Again, if you are enjoying what you're seeing, please do subscribe. And the main thing is, please share your comments whatever you got. If you'd like us to speak to any biologists or conservationists in particular, let me know, and just it'd be great to hear from you guys. I think that wraps up. What time are we at? 25 minutes. I think that's good. So for me today, thank you so much for tuning in. I will catch you next time.